The sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the Cascade Mountains, casting elongated shadows across the forest floor. The tranquil beauty of the wilderness belied the stories whispered among the locals, tales of the missing, the haunted woods, and something unnatural lurking just out of sight. As a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service, I had always taken these stories with a grain of salt, focusing instead on the task at hand, ensuring the safety of hikers and campers in the vast, often unforgiving terrain. It was late autumn, and the air was crisp with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. My partner, Mark, and I sat in our small cabin, surrounded by maps and radio equipment, readying ourselves for the weekend's influx of visitors. The evening was quiet, save for the crackling of the wood stove and the occasional rustle of wildlife outside. "Another weekend, another chance to rescue some lost souls," Mark said, smirking as he shuffled through the stack of emergency reports. I chuckled, feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation. Each call-out was a reminder of our purpose, a call to protect those who ventured too deep into the woods, driven by adventure or curiosity. We had seen it all: hikers who miscalculated their routes, families separated during day trips, and even the occasional overconfident climber who underestimated the mountain's power. Just as I settled back into my chair, the radio crackled to life, jolting us both upright. The dispatcher's voice was urgent, slicing through the stillness of the cabin. "All units, we have a report of a missing hiker in the Skagit Valley area. Male, late 20s, last seen at the Cascade Falls trailhead. Search and rescue teams are requested to respond immediately." Mark exchanged a glance with me, his expression serious. "That's just a few miles from here. We should go." "Agreed," I said, grabbing my jacket and equipment. The adrenaline surged through me as we loaded our gear into the truck. I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The forest was a beautiful yet dangerous entity capable of trapping the unprepared. As we drove, the fading light transformed the trees into looming silhouettes, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. I glanced at the map spread across my lap, tracing the route to the trailhead. The hiker's name was still unknown to us, but I felt a pang of concern for him, a reminder of the responsibility we bore. Arriving at the trailhead, we found a small gathering of worried friends and family, their faces pale and anxious. A local officer briefed us, his tone grim. The hiker was last seen about 2 hours ago. He was supposed to return before dark. His friends reported him missing when he didn't come back. They heard strange noises in the woods and got spooked, so they decided to wait at the car. Mark and I nodded, absorbing the details. As we prepared to head into the forest, the group's tension hung thick in the air. "We'll find him," I reassured them, though I wasn't sure if I was convincing them or myself. Equipped with flashlights and our survival gear, we entered the forest. The tall trees towered above us, their trunks thick and gnarled. As we hiked deeper, the daylight faded, replaced by a suffocating darkness that felt almost alive. The only sounds were the crunch of leaves beneath our boots and the distant rustling of unseen creatures. "Keep an eye out for any signs of him," I said, shining my flashlight ahead. "Footprints, personal belongings, anything that might lead us to him." Mark nodded, scanning the ground as we moved forward. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in my stomach, a sensation that something was watching us from the shadows. It was a familiar feeling, one I had ignored countless times during search missions, but tonight it felt different. After about an hour of searching, we found a small clearing near the base of a steep ridge. "Let's take a break," Mark suggested, and I agreed, grateful for a moment to catch my breath. We sat on a fallen log, listening to the forest around us. It was then that we heard it, a faint, echoing call, almost like a cry for help. It sent chills racing down my spine. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," Mark replied, looking at me with wide eyes. "It sounded like it came from over there." He gestured toward the dense thicket on our left. I felt a mix of dread and determination. We should check it out. We approached the thicket, our flashlight slicing through the darkness. The sound grew louder, morphing into a series of desperate shouts. "Help! Help!" The voice was weak, almost a whisper, yet it was unmistakably human. "Over here," I called, my heart racing as we pushed through the underbrush. The call grew more frantic, urging us on. We stumbled into a small clearing where the foliage parted, revealing a steep drop into a rocky ravine. "Stay back," I shouted, fear gripping my chest as I shone my light into the void. "Can you hear us? Where are you?" The call faded, replaced by a silence that pressed in around us. I turned to Mark, but he was staring at something beyond my shoulder, his expression frozen in fear. I followed his gaze and felt my blood run cold. Standing at the edge of the ravine was a figure, a man, disheveled and dirty, his clothes torn and stained. His eyes were wild, reflecting the beam of our flashlight. "Help me," he croaked, his voice hoarse and broken. "Stay where you are," I shouted, adrenaline surging as I reached for my radio. "We need a rope, fast. This guy needs assistance." Mark nodded, his face pale as he cautiously stepped closer. "What happened? Are you hurt?" The man looked up, panic etched into his features. I was camping. Something's out there. It's hunting me." His voice trembled, and I felt an unsettling chill creep into my bones. "Okay, just hold on. We'll get you out of here," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. The woods felt too quiet, as if they were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. As we prepared to descend into the ravine, the man's eyes darted around nervously. "You don't understand. It's not safe. It's coming for me." His words sent a jolt of fear through me. "What do you mean? What's coming?" Mark asked, his voice strained with concern. Before the man could answer, a low growl echoed from the darkness of the trees, reverberating through the clearing. My heart raced, and I instinctively took a step back. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Mark nodded, his eyes wide with fear. The growl grew louder, more menacing, as if something unseen was closing in on us. "We need to move, now," I shouted, my instincts kicking in. I turned back to the man. "Hold on, we'll get you out." But the man was already backing away, his eyes filled with terror. "No, you don't understand. You can't help me. It's already chosen me." Before I could respond, he turned and sprinted deeper into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. My stomach dropped as I watched him vanish, leaving only the echo of his panic behind. "Should we go after him?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, glancing back at the darkness that now felt more foreboding than ever. "No," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "We need to get back to the others and regroup." As we retraced our steps through the dense foliage, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone in the woods. The oppressive silence was suffocating, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist, hiding whatever malevolence lurked just beyond our sight. The urgency of the situation weighed heavily on us as we made our way back to the trailhead. The last remnants of daylight were fading fast, and the temperature dropped sharply. When we reached the gathered group, the faces that had once been filled with hope were now etched with worry. "What happened?" one of the friends demanded, her voice trembling. "Did you find him?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "We found a man, but he ran deeper into the woods. He's scared, and he said something is hunting him." The crowd murmured in disbelief. "What do you mean something is hunting him?" a man shouted. "That's insane." "I know it sounds crazy," Mark interjected. "But we heard the growl, and he looked terrified. We need to organize a more thorough search, but we should wait for the morning light. It's too dangerous to go in after him now." The group was restless, the fear palpable in the cool night air. I could see the tension in their faces, the blend of worry and disbelief. I turned to the local officer, who nodded grimly. "We should set up a perimeter and keep an eye on the trail. If he comes back, we'll be ready." As night fell, we set up a base camp at the trailhead. Flashlights flickered like stars against the darkness, and the fire crackled, casting flickering shadows that danced among the trees. I couldn't shake the image of the man's terrified face from my mind. What had he experienced in these woods? And more importantly, what had caused him to run? As I sat by the fire, the glow warmed my skin, but I felt an unease creeping in, a sensation of being watched. I scanned the tree line, my heart racing, but there was only darkness. I tried to shake off the feeling, reminding myself that I was trained for situations like this. I had faced danger before, and I wouldn't let fear consume me now. "Hey," Mark said, pulling me from my thoughts. "You okay?" I nodded, forcing a smile, just thinking about what could have happened to him. "We'll find him," he assured me. "We have to. The longer he's out there, the more vulnerable he is." We shared stories with the group to keep spirits up, recounting past rescues and the triumphs we'd had in the wilderness. But as laughter faded and the stories waned, the weight of uncertainty returned, pressing down on me. Around midnight, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The moon hung high in the sky, illuminating the forest with a silvery glow. I wandered down the path, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The beauty of the night was deceptive. Every rustle of leaves or snap of twigs felt like an omen. Just as I was about to turn back, I caught a glimpse of something in the distance, a flicker of movement beyond the trees. My heart skipped a beat as I instinctively stepped closer, curiosity piquing my interest. Was it the missing man? I hesitated, feeling the prickling sensation of unease crawling up my spine. The woods were too quiet, too still. I raised my flashlight and pointed it toward the movement. The beam sliced through the darkness, but nothing was there, just shadows and branches swaying in the wind. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. No answer came, only the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I felt a surge of adrenaline and took a step forward. Suddenly, the growl echoed through the trees again, low and guttural, sending chills racing down my spine. It was closer this time, reverberating off the trunks like a warning. I spun around, scanning the woods, my flashlight shaking in my grip. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it, a fleeting shadow moving between the trees. It was quick, almost too fast to comprehend, and my breath caught in my throat. Instinct kicked in, and I bolted back toward the trailhead, my feet pounding against the ground. I burst into the camp, gasping for breath, my heart racing. "Did you hear that?" I blurted out, wide-eyed. Mark and the others turned to me, confusion etched on their faces. "What's wrong?" he asked. The growl. It was right there, and I saw something fast. "We need to be careful." The fire crackled and the group's faces shifted from confusion to concern. I could see the fear building among them, the tension tightening like a noose. Mark stood up, his expression serious. "We need to keep watch. Let's split into teams and take turns staying awake." As we organized our shifts, I felt a heavy weight in the pit of my stomach. The woods, once a place of solace, had transformed into a hunting ground, a labyrinth of dread. The stories of the missing flashed in my mind, each tale a thread woven into the fabric of the night, warning us of what might lurk in the shadows. The night dragged on, each hour stretching endlessly as I wrestled with the growing sense of unease. The fire burned low, and the once comforting crackle now felt like a countdown, each pop a reminder of the darkness encroaching around us. When it was my turn to stand watch, I took a position near the edge of the clearing, flashlight in hand, scanning the perimeter for any signs of movement. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in, a suffocating shroud that seemed to envelop everything in its grasp. Hours passed, and the silence was deafening. Just as I began to think I had imagined the growl, it came again, a low, rumbling sound that reverberated through the ground beneath me. My heart raced as I peered into the blackness, trying to locate the source. "Mark," I called softly, not wanting to disturb the fragile stillness. "Can you hear that?" There was no response, only the sound of rustling leaves. The fear clawed at my chest, urging me to move, to escape this sense of impending doom. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus on the task at hand. The missing man was still out there, and if there was a chance he needed help, I had to be ready. Just then, I saw movement, a figure darting between the trees. My pulse quickened as I squinted into the darkness. "Mark," I called again, panic lacing my voice. I took a cautious step forward, my flashlight illuminating the thick underbrush. "Is that you?" Silence. The air felt electric, charged with an unseen presence. I steadied my breathing, trying to quell the rising tide of fear. I had to stay calm. I was trained for this. Then, the growl erupted again, louder and more ferocious, shaking me to my core. It sounded closer now, and I instinctively took a step back, feeling the weight of fear settle heavily on my shoulders. I turned to run back to the camp, but before I could move, a flash of movement caught my eye, a dark silhouette lunging toward me from the tree line. I barely had time to react before the creature was upon me. It was massive, its form a blur of fur and teeth, moving with a speed that was impossible for anything natural. I stumbled back, tripping over a root and falling hard to the ground, my flashlight skittering away. "Help," I screamed, the sound swallowed by the night. In the chaos, the creature paused, sniffing the air, its breath hot and rancid. I could see its eyes now, glowing, predatory, locked onto me with an insatiable hunger. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to find my flashlight, fumbling in the dark. Just then, I heard voices calling from the camp, the flashlights flickering to life as Mark and the others rushed toward me. "Get back," Mark shouted, his voice cutting through the darkness. "What is it?" In that moment, the creature retreated into the shadows, a phantom slipping away into the night. I scrambled to my feet, breathless and terrified, my heart pounding in my chest. "It was right here," I gasped, pointing to the darkness where it had vanished. "Did you see it?" Mark shook his head, his expression grave. "No, but we heard the growl. What the hell is going on?" "We need to regroup and come up with a plan," I said, still trembling. The weight of the night bore down on us, and I felt the darkness closing in again. "That man is still out there. We have to find him before it's too late." We gathered everyone at the fire, each face lit with fear and uncertainty. "We'll need to divide into smaller teams," Mark suggested, glancing around. "We can cover more ground that way and keep in constant communication." "What if that thing comes back?" one of the friends interjected, her voice shaky. "What if it's already tracking us?" "It might be," I admitted, the realization dawning on me. "We have to move quickly and stay alert. We can't let fear paralyze us. Our priority is to find the missing hiker and get everyone to safety." As the group murmured in agreement, I felt a wave of determination wash over me. We couldn't let this entity control us. We were trained to handle the wilderness and whatever dangers it held. With a plan in place, we set out into the forest once more, the weight of fear now tempered with resolve. The beam of our flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. As we moved deeper into the woods, I could feel the atmosphere shift. Something was out there, something that was watching, waiting. The air was thick with tension, each rustle of leaves sending ripples of fear through the group. We split into smaller teams, each one armed with radios for communication. I paired with Mark, our bond strengthened by the unspoken understanding of the danger that loomed over us. "Stay close," I whispered, my senses heightened, "and keep your eyes peeled." We moved slowly, carefully navigating the treacherous terrain. The night felt alive, the forest breathing around us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted. Every shadow seemed to shift, every sound amplified in the stillness. "Do you think he's okay?" Mark asked, breaking the silence. I sighed, glancing around at the towering trees. "I hope so, but we have to find him. Whatever he saw, whatever he experienced, he deserves a chance." As we continued our search, I felt the atmosphere change again, thickening like fog rolling in. The woods were darker, the shadows deeper. I strained to hear any signs of life, a call, a scream, but the only sound was the soft crunch of our footsteps on the leaf-covered ground. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. "This is Unit 3, we've found something. Over." The voice was shaky, filled with urgency. "Where are you?" I responded, gripping the radio tightly. "Near the old cabin. We think it might be connected to the missing hiker." "Hold tight, we're coming." Mark and I exchanged a glance, our determination renewed. We moved quickly toward the coordinates provided, the forest seeming to part for us, as if sensing our urgency. As we approached the cabin, the trees thinned, and an eerie silence fell over us. The old structure stood crooked and forlorn, its windows dark and empty. I felt a chill run down my spine, a sense of dread pooling in my stomach. "Stay sharp," I whispered to Mark as we stepped onto the creaking porch. The air was stale, filled with the scent of decay and mildew. The door hung ajar, as if inviting us in. "Hello," Mark called, his voice echoing in the stillness. We stepped inside, flashlights illuminating the dust-covered floor. The cabin was a time capsule, filled with remnants of lives once lived. Old photographs lined the walls, their subjects long forgotten. I felt a strange sense of foreboding, as if the very walls were steeped in despair. Suddenly, I spotted something on the floor, clothing, torn and stained, eerily familiar. My heart dropped as I recognized it. "This is his," I exclaimed, picking up a piece of fabric. Just then, I heard it again, the growl, low and threatening, reverberating from the shadows. "Mark," I shouted, panic gripping my chest. "We need to get out of here." Before we could react, the door slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang, plunging us into darkness. My breath quickened as I fumbled for the flashlight, its beam flickering erratically. "Get back," Mark yelled, backing toward the window. "We have to find another way out." The growl echoed again, closer this time, a primal sound that sent shivers racing down my spine. I felt trapped, like prey cornered by a predator. "Where is it?" I hissed, scanning the darkness. Then, through the fog of fear, I saw it, a pair of glowing eyes peering in through the window, watching us with an insatiable hunger. I could barely breathe, my heart racing in my chest. "We can't stay here," I screamed, the panic boiling over. Mark pushed against the window, desperation in his eyes. "On 3, 1, 2. Before he could finish, the creature lunged at us from the shadows, its massive form barreling through the door like it was made of paper. I barely had time to scream as it surged forward, jaws snapping. In that split second, survival instincts kicked in. I ducked, feeling the rush of air as it passed over me. "Run," I shouted, grabbing Mark's arm and pulling him toward the back of the cabin. We sprinted through the darkened space, our flashlights illuminating the chaos behind us. The growl filled the air, a terrifying sound that pushed us to move faster. The creature was gaining on us, its breath hot and rancid, filling the air with dread. We burst through the back door, the night air hitting us like a wall. I stumbled, regaining my footing, and we dashed into the trees, our hearts pounding in unison. "Keep running," Mark shouted, his voice filled with urgency. We raced through the underbrush, dodging branches and roots, the darkness swallowing us whole. I could hear the creature behind us, its growls echoing like thunder through the trees, a relentless force of nature that refused to relent. As we stumbled into a clearing, I felt a surge of hope. "This way," I yelled, leading Mark toward the edge where the trees thinned. "We can make it back to the camp." But as we ran, a sharp pain lanced through my ankle, sending me crashing to the ground. "No," Mark shouted, turning back to help me. "It's coming," I gasped, trying to crawl away, but the pain was blinding. Just as I thought it was over, a flash of light caught my eye. The others had arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating the chaos around us. "Get back," Mark yelled, pulling me away as the growl grew closer. The group rushed in, their flashlights bright and unwavering, and the creature paused, its form hulking and monstrous in the light. It hesitated, glancing between us and the safety of the trees. For a brief moment it seemed uncertain, caught between two worlds. "Now," I shouted, pushing through the pain. "We have to distract it." The others surged forward, shining their flashlights directly at the creature. The sudden brightness caused it to rear back, growling in frustration. "This way," one of the friends yelled, leading us toward the other side of the clearing. Mark helped me to my feet, and together we stumbled toward the trees. The creature, enraged, let out a bone-chilling roar that echoed through the night. It lunged forward, and I felt a surge of fear. "Keep moving," Mark urged, his grip firm on my arm. We ran into the thicket, the branches scratching at our skin as we pushed through. We followed the voices of our friends, the sounds of the forest filling our ears. The growl faded behind us, but I could feel the creature's presence looming, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Finally, we broke through the trees and into the safety of the camp. The fire flickered brightly, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. "What was that thing?" I managed to ask, looking at Mark, who was still panting beside me. "I don't know," he replied, his eyes wide with disbelief. "But it was unlike anything I've ever seen." As the others gathered around, the realization of our close encounter settled heavily on us. The fear in their eyes mirrored my own, the weight of the night pressing down like a suffocating blanket. "We have to leave," I said finally, my voice shaking. "We can't stay here." Mark nodded, and the group rallied, gathering their things as quickly as possible. The forest felt different now, the trees watching us with a quiet intensity as we prepared to leave. Just as we were about to head out, a voice rang out from the shadows. "Wait, don't leave me." It was the missing hiker. He emerged from the darkness, wild-eyed and disheveled, his clothes torn and covered in dirt. My heart raced as I took a step forward. "You're okay," I exclaimed, relief flooding through me. "No, you don't understand," he cried, panic seeping into his voice. "It's still out there. We need to go, now." Before I could respond, the growl echoed through the trees again, sending chills racing down my spine. The creature had found us. Panic surged through the group as we turned toward the trees, the growl reverberating in our chests. The atmosphere thickened, suffocating us in fear. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins, urging me to act. "Everyone, we need to stick together," I shouted, my voice strained. "We'll make a stand here." Mark and I exchanged a determined glance, and he nodded. "We can't let it take anyone else. We'll fight back if we have to." The missing hiker stumbled forward, his face a mask of terror. "You don't understand. It's not just a creature, it's a curse. It wants us." "What do you mean?" I pressed, my heart racing as I scanned the tree line for any signs of movement. "The people who go missing, they don't just vanish, they become part of it, drawn into its darkness." He was frantic now, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting the creature to pounce at any moment. "Stop," Mark shouted, his voice sharp. "We need to focus. How do we fight it?" The hiker shook his head. "You can't fight it. You have to appease it, lure it away. That's the only way." "Then we'll do that," I said, my resolve hardening. "We can't just wait around for it to come for us. We need to buy ourselves some time." Mark grabbed a flashlight and pointed it toward the trees, illuminating the path behind us. "We need to create a diversion. We can make noise, draw it away from the camp." Everyone nodded, the fear in their eyes replaced by a flicker of determination. We gathered what we could, a few pots, pans, and whatever else we could find. The plan was simple: make as much noise as possible, create chaos, and lure the creature away from our friends. As we moved to the edge of the camp, I felt the tension rising. The growl echoed again, louder this time, reverberating through the ground. It was close, and I could sense its predatory gaze searching for us. On the count of 3, I said, my heart pounding. 1, 2, 3. We banged the pots together, shouting and screaming to create a cacophony of sound. The noise filled the air, a desperate plea for survival. I could feel the creature's presence shift, its focus drawn toward the chaos we had created. Then, just as we hoped, the growl turned into a snarl, and the massive shape emerged from the trees, its glowing eyes locked onto us. "Now, run," Mark shouted. We sprinted in the opposite direction, adrenaline fueling our every step. I glanced back to see the creature lunge toward the noise, its form a blur of fur and teeth. We raced into the darkness, the sound of our hearts pounding in our ears. We ran through the trees, branches whipping against our faces as we pushed deeper into the woods. The creature's growl faded, replaced by the rush of the wind in our ears. But we didn't stop. We couldn't afford to let our guard down. Finally, we reached a clearing, the moonlight illuminating our path. "This way," Mark shouted, pointing toward a narrow trail that wound deeper into the forest. We followed him, pushing through the underbrush, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The fear of the creature's return hung over us like a dark cloud, but we pressed on, the adrenaline driving us forward. Just as we reached the edge of the clearing, I heard a rustle behind us. My heart stopped. "Is it coming back?" I whispered, panic seeping into my voice. Mark spun around, flashlight in hand, scanning the darkness. "Stay alert." The air felt electric as we waited, hearts pounding in unison. The night was still, too quiet, and I could feel the weight of dread pressing down on us. Then, out of the shadows, a figure emerged. A man, wild-eyed and frantic. "Help," he shouted, collapsing to the ground in front of us. "It's coming. We have to go." My heart sank as I recognized him as another missing hiker. "Where is it?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "Behind me," he gasped, struggling to catch his breath. "It won't stop until it has us all." As if in response, the growl erupted again, the sound low and menacing, vibrating through the ground. My heart raced as I turned to Mark, fear etched on his face. "We need to keep moving." We took off down the narrow trail, the underbrush tearing at our clothes as we ran. The creature was close, its breath hot on our heels, and I could feel the panic rising in the group. "Faster," I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "We can't let it catch us." We pushed ourselves harder, the forest blurring around us. The growl echoed behind us, a constant reminder of the danger lurking just out of reach. I felt a surge of determination. We had come too far to give up now. Then, as we rounded a bend, the trail opened up into another clearing, this one illuminated by the light of the moon. I could see the remnants of an old cabin, its walls crumbling but still standing against the test of time. "This way," Mark shouted, leading us toward the structure. "We can barricade ourselves inside." We rushed inside, the door creaking as we slammed it shut behind us. The inside was dark, the air thick with dust and decay, but it felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos outside. "We need to block the door," I yelled, looking for anything we could use. We shoved furniture and debris against the entrance, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. "Is it gone?" someone asked, fear lacing their voice. "I don't know," Mark replied, scanning the shadows. "We can't let our guard down." The growl echoed outside, and we huddled together, hearts racing. I felt a surge of fear as I glanced at the windows, the darkness pressing against the glass like a suffocating weight. "Do you think it can get in?" the hiker asked, his eyes wide with terror. "I don't know," I said, trying to sound calm despite the rising tide of fear. "But we need to stay quiet and keep our wits about us." As we waited, I felt the tension building, the weight of the darkness outside pressing in on us. The growl faded into a low growl, a reminder that the creature was still out there, waiting for its chance. Then, without warning, the door shuddered as something slammed against it. My heart raced as I turned to the group, fear etched on their faces. "Hold steady," I shouted, gripping the nearest piece of furniture. Another crash reverberated through the cabin, and I felt the ground shake beneath us. The creature was trying to break in, and we had to be ready to fight. Just then, one of the windows shattered, sending shards of glass flying into the room. I flinched as a massive paw reached through the opening, grasping for anything within reach. "Get back," I yelled, instinctively moving to protect the others. Mark was already moving, grabbing a nearby chair and swinging it at the creature's paw, trying to force it back. "Get out of the way," he shouted. The paw withdrew momentarily, and I could see the creature's eyes glowing in the darkness, locked onto us with an insatiable hunger. It let out a terrifying roar, a sound that echoed through the woods like thunder. "We need to find a weapon," I shouted, scanning the room for anything we could use. The hiker darted toward the remnants of an old shelf, pulling down a rusted axe. "Here," he yelled, his voice filled with desperation. "Perfect." I took the axe, feeling its weight in my hands. "We can't let it in. We have to fight back." As the creature continued to claw at the door, we readied ourselves. The growls echoed louder, the sound reverberating through the cabin like a battle cry. I felt fear coursing through my veins, but beneath it, there was a surge of determination. With a roar, the door buckled under another strike, and I swung the axe at the space just beyond the door. "Back, get back," I shouted, the adrenaline pushing me forward. Mark positioned himself beside me, gripping a broken chair leg like a club. "We have to hold it off until we can escape." The door creaked ominously, the splintering wood threatening to give way. We braced ourselves, waiting for the moment it broke through. Finally, with a deafening crash, the door shattered, splinters flying in all directions. The creature lunged forward, its massive form filling the doorway, glowing eyes locked onto us with an insatiable hunger. I swung the axe, aiming for its nearest paw. The blade connected with a sickening thud, and the creature let out a roar of pain, pulling back momentarily. "Now," Mark yelled, and we all surged forward, determined to fight back. We struck again and again, our combined strength pushing against the creature. It thrashed and howled, but we didn't relent. In that moment, we became a united front against the darkness, pushing back against the entity that sought to consume us. The fear that had once gripped us transformed into a fierce resolve, an unwillingness to be victims any longer. Finally, with one last blow, the creature staggered back, its form dissolving into shadows as it fled into the depths of the forest. We stood panting in the aftermath, the adrenaline coursing through us as we processed what had just happened. "It's gone," I gasped, looking at the others. "I think we did it." But even as the words left my mouth, I felt the weight of the darkness still pressing against us. A reminder of the battle we had fought. We couldn't let our guard down. The forest was still alive with secrets, and we knew we had to leave before the creature returned. As we gathered ourselves and prepared to head out, the missing hiker looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling. "I didn't think we'd make it." I nodded, my heart heavy with the reality of what we had faced. "We're not out of danger yet," I said, glancing at the trees, "but we can't stay here." Together, we ventured into the woods, the moon guiding our way as we made our escape. The darkness no longer felt suffocating. Instead, it was a reminder of our strength and resilience. We had faced the unknown and come out stronger on the other side. As we reached the trailhead, the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon. The forest, once a realm of fear, now felt alive with possibility. We had survived, and we would carry the memories of that night with us, a testament to the power of unity in the face of darkness. And as we walked into the light, I couldn't help but feel that we had not only escaped the creature, but had also uncovered a deeper truth about ourselves, one that would stay with us long after we left the shadows of the woods behind.